After her second divorce, Ana Trujillo drifted into her 40s, enjoying the single life.
House to house, apartment to apartment, man to man.
But that all changed when she met a Swedish-born scientist named Stefan Andersson.
He was very cosmopolitan.
He was brilliant, highly educated.
And quite the gentleman.
He puts women on a pedestal.
An 18th-story pedestal, to be exact.
A beautiful condominium overlooking Herman Park.
They had doormen, they had valet parking.
But they wouldn't have much time. Just months after they moved in together, Stefan would be dead.
Like a scene from a horror movie.
Was it self-defense?
I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating.
Or did Ana have anger issues?
That is what makes her so dangerous.
Either way, one thing about the killing was guaranteed to grab headlines. Her choice of weapon.
This crazed woman stabbed someone with her stiletto heel.
Houston, Texas, June 9, 2013. At 3:41 that Sunday morning, Harris County dispatchers received a frantic phone call from one of the city's most exclusive addresses, a high-rise condo building in the upscale museum district.
This is a very dramatic 911 call. She is crying. She is sobbing at certain points, and she can almost be described as hysterical.
Ma'am, calm down.
The caller was 44-year-old Ana Trujillo. She told the dispatcher that her boyfriend, Stefan Andersson, had just attacked her. Despite that, Ana said she wasn't the one who needed help. It was Stefan.
He's bleeding me to die. He's beating me up and I just been myself.
But now, her priority appeared to be saving Stefan's life.
Ana pleads for someone to send an ambulance and says that they need to get there quickly, that he's dying.
I need you here right now.
Police and paramedics rushed to the scene. And when Ana met the first officer at the door of Stefan's condo, he quickly realized that she hadn't been exaggerating.
He sees Ana Trujillo soaked in blood.
And that was nothing compared to the scene inside the condo.
The carpet was soaked and saturated. There was blood splatter all over the walls.
There was so much blood that it looked like a scene from a horror movie.
And Stefan was the most horrifying of all. The 59-year-old pharmaceutical researcher lay sprawled on the floor, his face a bloody ruin.
Stefan Andersson was not even recognizable. He did not look like a person.
In fact, Stefan's injuries were so severe that the officer at the scene made an automatic assumption about what caused them.
They thought it was a gunshot.
The first responding officer immediately asks her, "Where is the weapon?"
And that's when things took a surprising turn. Because the weapon Ana pointed to on the bloody floor wasn't a gun. It was a shoe.
There was a 5.5-inch blue suede stiletto heel within inches of Stefan Andersson's head.
But did the apparently improvised weapon support Ana's story about a frantic life-or-death struggle? Or, in a fit of anger, had she simply lashed out with the first thing that came to hand? Born in 1969, Ana Trujillo grew up in Waco, Texas. part of a family of strict Jehovah's Witnesses.
She seemed to have a very supportive family.
They weren't well off, though, and Anna never went to college. Instead, she got married straight out of high school.
She was around 19 years old at the time, and her husband worked off and on, but Anna was the main support of the house.
Outgoing and attractive, she made good money as a sales rep for the local Coca-Cola bottler.
She did very well at it, and she was with Coca-Cola around 10 or 12 years.
Anna and her husband had 2 daughters together, but split in 2000.
Anna Trujillo eventually was divorced.
She spent the next year as a single mom.
Anna had custody of her 2 daughters.
And then in 2001, Anna met and married a new man, and the family moved to suburban Houston.
They wanted to be closer to her new husband's son.
Life in Houston was an eye-opening experience for a woman who grew up poor in Waco.
This was the first time that Anna had lived in a big city, and she fell in love with Houston.
But after 7 years of marriage, she fell out of love with her second husband.
That marriage subsequently ended in divorce.
And with her daughters all but grown, Anna embarked on a new life.
Her 2 daughters were living with him out in the suburbs, and Anna moved down into the city.
In the city, the 39-year-old found a new career.
She did work as a licensed massage therapist.
She was quite outgoing, very animated, kind of a go-getter. She knew what she wanted to do, and she was out doing it.
And mostly what the newly single Anna wanted to do was enjoy life.
She just changed drastically.
In ways that were a complete 180 from her background and upbringing.
Her family was religious.
Anna never drank very much. She was starting to drink more. She got really involved in the nightlife.
She frequented bars and restaurants. She liked lots of attention, and she liked to go out and party.
And when Anna partied, she partied hard.
She liked tequila shots.
She was just a loose cannon. You didn't know what you were going to expect from Anna Trujillo.
She got plenty of attention, too.
People were always attracted to her.
Especially men.
Anna Trujillo traded on her sexuality
for drinks, meals, and places to stay.
She didn't have her own apartment, her own place.
She was somewhat of a drifter. She went from house to house, apartment to apartment, man to man.
Which was basically how Anna first met Stefan Anderson.
Anna was staying with a man who was living in one of the upper floors in the same condominium building.
So they met each other in the hall.
And they hadn't been talking long before Anna discovered that the debonair older man with the accent was single. Born in 1954, Stefan was a respected pharmaceutical researcher.
He was brilliant, highly educated.
Originally from Sweden, he had been in the States since the 1980s.
He really liked America because people are really friendly and open here.
He was very cosmopolitan.
When he met Anna, the well-traveled scientist had recently given up a pharmaceutical research job in Dallas to become a professor at the University of Houston.
He taught biochemistry.
Although both positions paid well.
Stefan Anderson lived in a rather affluent high-rise.
The building did have a concierge to the front. They had doormen. They had valet parking.
And when Stefan bumped into Anna in the lobby of his building in August of 2012, he was more than happy to strike up a conversation with the attractive woman.
She was really outgoing, really funny. She was really entertaining.
Anna appeared equally enamored with the 58-year-old scientist. Because when Stefan asked if she would like to get a drink later, she immediately said yes, despite the fact that she was staying with a different man in the building.
That relationship was ending.
They ended up going out that evening together.
And within days, she was spending her nights with Stefan, too.
It didn't take long before they moved in together.
Not that they spent too many evenings in Stefan's condo.
They would go to various restaurants and bars there in the museum district.
This is one of the best areas in Houston.
Lots of fine museums, fine restaurants, lots of interesting nightlife.
And Stefan always picked up the check.
He puts women on a pedestal.
Even if their relationship raised a few eyebrows among Stefan's elite social circle.
Their relationship, to a lot of people, is bizarre.
You have a woman who doesn't have an education to speak of. You have a world-renowned scientist. People are wondering, what are those two doing together?
Some people, perhaps, but for others, it was obvious.
She was 44, he was 59.
He was very happy and proud to show her off.
He told a friend that he met a hot Latino woman and that he was really enjoying it.
And in some ways, Anna may have been good for him, too.
He was a shy man.
He was not assertive in any way.
At least, that's what everyone thought. But less than a year after they first met, a late-night 911 call would leave the police wondering, was Stefan really that mild-mannered? Or did the research scientist's suave exterior mask a brutal secret?
Meow, meow, meow. Hello.
On June 9th, 2013, Houston police responded to an urgent 911 call from the Park Lane, one of the most exclusive addresses in town.
A beautiful condominium overlooking Herman Park.
Minutes earlier, 44-year-old Anna Trujillo had called 911 to report that her boyfriend, Stefan Anderson, had just assaulted her.
I was waiting to let me go, and he wouldn't.
Anna is hysterical. She's crying. She's sobbing. It's actually hard to even understand her.
And when the first officer on the scene reached the condo, it was clear that Anna had reason to be distraught.
When he gets there, Anna Trujillo opens the door, covered in blood.
But that was nothing compared to Stefan's condition.
At the end of the hallway, he can see Stefan Anderson laying there in a pool of blood.
The 59-year-old university professor wasn't moving, his head a bloody mess. And when the officer checked Stefan's vital signs,
he finds that Dr. Anderson has no pulse.
EMTs arrived on the scene moments later and confirmed that Stefan was dead. There was another surprise coming, though, because when the officer at the scene asked Anna where the weapon was,
he originally thought Dr. Anderson had actually been shot in the head.
Anna pointed to the high-heeled shoe on the floor next to Stefan's head.
Who knew you could use that as a murder weapon?
Stefan had been killed with a 5.5-inch stiletto.
You could see that it was bloody. You could see that there was hair wrapped around it.
While crime scene investigators began processing the condo, the police transported Anna downtown to take her statement, even as news crews began flocking to the scene.
Cameras are already starting to come to the Park Lane.
We all just heard this apparent crazed woman stab someone with her stiletto heel.
Escorted out of the Park Lane before the news crews could set up, the police brought Anna downtown for a formal statement. And once inside the interrogation room, Anna explained that her relationship with Stefan had started out well.
We went out, and it was positive, it was very good. He really liked me.
He actually texted me that he was crazy and in love.
And according to Anna, he meant it.
He asked me to marry him, and he asked me to marry him.
Anna said that her first inclination was to say yes.
I like his intelligence, he's respectable, and he treated me very good.
But she also said that she hesitated. According to Anna, Stefan's devotion had a dark side.
She said there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than what people saw.
For one thing, Anna said that Stefan was a lonely, lonely man.
Most of his family still lived in Sweden. His close friends really were still in Dallas.
And once they started dating, Anna said that Stefan's affection for her had become obsessive.
That was his everything.
And Anna said that Stefan refused to let anything or anyone infringe on their relationship.
She claimed that he was very jealous.
Everywhere, he was just 24/7 on me.
But according to Anna, Stefan's drinking was the worst part.
He could not stop drinking.
He'd start drinking about 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night.
And when he was drunk, Anna said that the mild-mannered professor became a very different man.
He started becoming abusive.
Like physically abusive, mentally abusive?
Mentally abusive. Ugly, yeah, to me.
Just by words and how he treated you.
And then the words he used, yes.
Although words had been enough, according to Anna. She told the investigators that at the beginning of 2013, she'd packed her bags to leave.
I said, you know what, I can't live like this.
Anna said she had left, heading down to Mexico for an extended vacation. But she also claimed that Stefan had contacted her regularly the entire time she was gone, begging her to come back.
I told him that I love him, that he's drinking too much, that he needed, to stop.
According to Anna, that's exactly what Stefan did. She said that by early in the summer of 2013, Stefan had sought treatment and kicked his drinking habit entirely.
He was looking good, gets a tan.
Anna told the investigators that Stefan had been doing so well that when he once again asked her to marry him at the beginning of June, she had said yes.
This is what I wanted this whole time, so we're happy and everything.
But that happiness wouldn't last. According to Anna, she and Stefan had gone out on the town the night before, partly to celebrate their pending engagement.
They went to 5015, which is an upscale bar here in Houston.
And despite his recent return to sobriety, Anna said that she noticed that Stefan was drinking. Not that she apparently thought much of it at the time.
We're having a nice time, and it was good.
But Anna said by the time they got home, Stefan wasn't just drunk. She said he'd become angry, too.
And they'd both been drinking, and, it's a volatile situation.
According to Anna, Stefan had accused her of flirting with other men at the bar.
I get jealous when you're talking to those guys.
Anna said that when Stefan started getting belligerent, she had decided to leave. But according to Anna, when she turned for the door, Stefan had flown into a rage.
He just came and towards me. He goes, I'm going to go here anyway. You're not going to leave me. I can't ever.
Anna said that Stefan had gotten between her and the door.
He wouldn't let her leave.
I'm like, please, please let me leave.
But according to Anna, the more she pleaded, the angrier Stefan had become.
he starts to get out of control, and he's yelling and he's put into frenzy.
And when Anna bolted for the door,
And he grabbed me, and he wouldn't let me go. He started wrestling with me.
He got her into a very painful wrestling hold.
They said they fell over a couch, rolled off of the couch, struggled, went down the hall, struggled more.
He slammed her up against a wall.
Anna said she had fallen to the floor soon after, with Stefan on top of her.
I couldn't breathe, and I was like,
Dr. Anderson was hurting her tremendously, putting her in a lot of pain.
I was losing consciousness.
On the verge of blacking out, Anna said she had reached for the first thing she could find, her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She grabbed the shoe. That was the only thing that she could use as a weapon.
I was hitting him with the shoe. Please stop.
But she said that Stefan hadn't released her until it was too late.
And then that's when I saw the blood.
And it was only then, once he'd rolled off of her, that she'd realized just what she had done.
I felt sick and like I saw him.
If what Anna said was true, Stefan's death was quite possibly justified.
This is domestic violence. It was a sudden passion case. She did what she had to do.
It had all the makings of a self-defense case.
But only if she was telling the truth. And with what promised to be a high-profile homicide on their hands, the Houston police decided to take Anna into custody until they could check out her story. By mid-morning on June 9th, 2013, Anna Trujillo sat in a holding cell at the Houston Police Department. The 44-year-old massage therapist had been taken into custody a few hours earlier after killing her boyfriend, Stefan Anderson.
Whenever a woman kills a man, the first question is, what did he do? There is this perception out there that because women generally are not as violent as men, that clearly he must have deserved it.
And that appeared to be true in Anna's case. Questioned by the police, she said that Stefan, a 59-year-old research scientist and college professor, had attacked her in a drunken rage.
He started hitting me and I was telling him to please stop.
Anna said that she had fought back with the first weapon that came to hand, her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She started striking him with a shoe. It was the only thing available at the time.
She just did what she could to save herself.
And police were inclined to believe her.
Her story on the surface seemed very plausible.
The police did take her into custody while they verified her story, though. And the first step was having her strip off her bloody clothes so the police could document her injuries.
I photographed her from top to bottom, side to side, back.
But even before the photos were shot, Anna's story started to go awry.
Anna Trujillo suffered no injuries.
Anna Trujillo has not a mark on her, not a bruise, not a scratch, nothing.
It was a marked and extremely suspicious contrast to Stefan's injuries, which were massive.
Stefan Anderson was struck at least 25 times.
You could see definitive shapes of that heel mark right there on the head.
However, those weren't the only wounds the autopsy found, though.
He also had puncture wounds to the back and front of his forearms, and especially to the palms of his hands.
In other words, textbook defensive wounds.
We believe he put up his hands and arms to defend or protect his face.
Meanwhile, the crime scene investigators back at Stefan's condo had made some curious discoveries of their own concerning the blood spatter where Stefan had died.
The vast majority of the stains are all about 2 feet from the floor, very low to the ground.
Which suggested the exact opposite of Anna's story, that Stefan had been on top of her.
These blows were inflicted as Stefan Anderson was on his back.
And when the investigators examined the bloody clothes Anna had been wearing, they noticed something else.
Anna Trujillo had blood soaked in her crotch and in her thighs.
The defensive wounds, the blood spatter, and the bloodstains on her clothing all led the investigators to the same conclusion.
Every strike to Stefan Anderson was while he was laying down, and she was on top of him.
She was straddling him.
And if that was true, that meant Anna's entire account of Stefan's death was a lie.
Anna Trujillo did not act in self-defense.
However, when the investigators questioned the couple's friends, they confirmed at least part of Anna's story. Stefan had struggled with alcoholism, especially since moving to Houston a few years earlier.
He really didn't have a social network in place, and he did turn to drinking.
And Anna's claims that he was an angry, abusive drunk. Would his friends confirm that, too?
Anyone that knows him are 100% sure that there was no abuse from his side against her or towards her.
There was no information that said that Dr. Anderson had ever been violent with anybody, ever.
Stefan is this incredibly gentle man. Just incredibly gentle.
He would never even say bad words to anyone.
And while Stefan's friends admitted that he was an alcoholic, they said that compared to the Chardonnay-sipping Stefan, Anna was far worse.
Ms. Trujillo had been arrested twice for driving while intoxicated.
And considering the circumstances surrounding one of those arrests, it was amazing she hadn't killed someone then.
She had been driving the wrong way down one of the major freeways.
Some people in life don't really handle alcohol well, and she was one of those people.
The result was a downward spiral.
Every time I would see her, it seemed like she was more disheveled, more intoxicated.
She was kicked out of bars for being publicly intoxicated.
And according to her friends, Anna wasn't just a drunk. She was a mean drunk.
If something set her off, there was no telling what she would do.
She just blurts nasty things out. She just suddenly attacks them.
And when it came to men, friends claimed that Anna's attacks would often turn physical.
We found several men that actually had instances of her biting or striking them in the face.
She hit a man over the head with a candlestick.
Needless to say, once Anna had hooked up with the shy, quiet Stefan, friends had figured it was a disaster waiting to happen.
The two of them together was a bad combination.
They kind of spiraled out of control when the two of them were together.
I think in some ways it sounded like a perfect storm.
Not only was Anna loud and domineering,
she was the one that was aggressive.
Stefan's mild manner did little to keep her worst tendencies in check.
He would never stand up for himself. He doesn't want anyone to be angry or upset.
He would rather not hurt somebody's feelings and suffer himself rather than make someone feel uncomfortable.
And according to his friends, Stefan had suffered.
I heard from friends of his that he had come with black eyes.
In fact, friends said that Anna had only been living with him for a few weeks before Stefan realized he had to end things with her.
But she was a handful. She was too much.
Although even then, friends said that the mild-mannered scientist had, of course, hesitated.
He didn't really have it in him to throw someone out.
But at the beginning of 2013, His neighbors at the Park Lane had forced the issue.
The management at the Park Lane spoke to him about her and her presence in the apartment.
Other residents had actually complained about Ana Trujillo's behavior.
It was the last straw, friends said. Stefan had finally had enough.
By January or February of 2013, he wanted her out of his life.
And contrary to Anna's claims of an engagement, his friend said that 6 months into their relationship, he had kicked her out.
Changed his locks in his apartment.
Had her guest privileges revoked.
Although even then, Stefan hadn't made a clean break with Ana. Instead, he'd paid her way to Mexico.
He sent her to Mexico just to get her out of his hair.
With Ana gone, Stefan had started to move on.
He was happy again. There was no mentioning of ever getting back with her.
But was Ana as willing to walk away from Stefan? Friends said that when she returned from Mexico, Ana had a disturbing habit of turning up in the same upscale bars and restaurants Stefan frequented.
Stefan always had the same routine during the day, and she knew that routine.
He was easy to stalk.
And despite their recent breakup, friends said that Stefan went out of his way to be cordial to Ana.
Stefan was a really caring person.
He really wanted to help her.
In fact, Stefan even went so far as continuing to pay Anna's bar tab.
She basically lived off him even though she didn't live with him.
At least, not always. But according to friends, Stefan would still allow Ana to crash at his condo from time to time, whenever one of her other friends kicked her out.
Dr. Anderson seemed very torn. Ana Trujillo really had nowhere else to go.
I don't know that he's ever cut out any person out of his life.
But had Stefan's kindness and his unwillingness to assert himself ended up costing him his life? By the end of that Sunday, the authorities were convinced. Less than 24 hours after Stefan's death, they booked Ana Trujillo on murder charges. On March 31st, 2014, Ana Trujillo walked into a packed courtroom at Houston's Harris County Courthouse.
There were cameras and definitely lots of media attention in the courtroom.
The 45-year-old massage therapist was charged with the sensational murder of her ex-boyfriend, a 59-year-old scientist and university professor named Stefan Anderson.
The community interest was huge. Everyone was fascinated by this.
And given the weapon she had admitted using to kill Stefan, it was easy to see why.
The news that a woman had pummeled a man to death with her stiletto heel just took off like wildfire.
She was dubbed as the stiletto murderer.
Released on a $100,000 bond, Ana had spent the months before the trial telling anyone who would listen that she wasn't a murderer at all.
She had done several pre-trial interviews trying to get her side or her story out there.
He attacked me and I defended myself.
Ana Trujillo's story was always self-defense.
The pain was so excruciating and I was in fear and all I had was my shoes.
But the prosecution wasn't buying it.
The physical evidence just didn't match what she was trying to say.
And in opening statements, the prosecutor said that contrary to her claims that Stefan was an abusive alcoholic, Ana was the real violent drunk in the relationship.
Her drinking usually ended in her becoming physically violent.
According to the state, June 9th, 2013 had been no exception. The prosecution argued that when Stefan and Ana had returned to his condo after a night out drinking, something had set off Ana's notorious temper.
They came back, things got heated, and she just became out of control.
And at some point during her outburst, the prosecution believed that Anna had shoved her ex-boyfriend to the floor.
We know that Dr. Anderson had fallen down on his back. He's face up.
That's when, according to the prosecution, Anna had grabbed the murder weapon, her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She climbed on top of his chest and then repeatedly struck him.
It was basically like taking an ice pick to someone's face.
And the prosecutors claimed that even as she beat him to death, there was no evidence that the kind, gentle Stefan had tried to retaliate.
Even at the moment that Stefan Anderson is being beat to death, he refuses to hit a woman.
There was no reason for her to kill Stefan Anderson. This was not self-defense, this was murder.
And the prosecution felt they had the witnesses to prove it, too, including one who could attest to Anna's behavior on the night of Stefan's murder. On March 31st, 2014, prosecutors called a Houston cab driver named Rosemary Gomez to the stand. She testified that Stefan had called for a cab at about 1:30 a.m. on June 9th from the Museum District bar where he'd had dinner and drinks with Anna. But when Rosemary met Stefan outside the bar, Anna hadn't wanted to leave.
He asked me if I could wait a minute because he had to go get his lady friend.
Security footage from inside the bar appeared to back up Rosemary's story, too.
You see Anna Trujillo flirt with other men at the bar. You see her to continue to drink alcohol.
And it was only after several minutes with the meter running that Stefan finally managed to pry Anna away from her tequila.
You could tell she had way too much to drink.
Anna Trujillo was very aggressive, very angry, and belligerent.
And according to Rosemary, the cab ride that followed had seemed like an eternity.
Anna Trujillo cussed her out on the way home and got very, very angry and verbally abusive with her.
F this, F that, bitch this, bitch that. It was like 8 minutes of hell.
Stefan had tried to make the best of the situation.
He was very calm the whole time, very together, you know. He never cursed, he never said anything bad.
He was apologizing for her to the cab driver.
He was more embarrassed than anything else.
And when the taxi had finally arrived at Stefan's building, Rosemary said that Anna had refused to wait while he paid the fare.
She started telling me, let me out this cab.
She was jerking on the door and stuff, trying to open it up, you know, and kicking at the back seat.
Despite her haste, Rosemary testified that once out of the cab, Anna had stood on the sidewalk and continued to scream at Stefan.
She's very derogatory in the way that she speaks to Dr. Anderson.
Just went on, you know, like a drug person, how they carry on.
In fact, Rosemary said she had been so disturbed by Anna's behavior that she had offered to drive Stefan somewhere, anywhere, to give Anna time to cool down.
I was concerned for his safety, and I let him know it. And I said, Mr. Anderson, I really got a bad feeling that something's gonna happen.
But according to Rosemary, Stefan had refused the offer.
He said, you're a very kind lady. He said, but thank you. He said, I'll be fine.
And then, according to Rosemary, she had watched helplessly as Stefan turned around and followed Anna into the building.
The last image of Stefan Anderson alive is actually pretty heartbreaking. You can see him walking into the lobby of the Park Lane, and he just looks defeated.
And in a little more than an hour, he would be dead. But while the prosecution accused Anna of killing Stefan in a drunken rage, when it was the defense's turn, they reminded the court that she wasn't the only one that had been drinking that evening.
Dr. Anderson was an alcoholic.
And that was despite his recent stint in rehab.
He was in relapse, that he was probably worse than when he first quit drinking.
And the defense had the evidence to prove it, too. Stefan's blood alcohol level.
It was above the legal limit.
The defense said that the results overwhelmingly supported Anna's self-defense story.
An alcoholic can just go off the deep end in a split second.
You can't trust that he's in his right state of mind.
The defense claimed that in the summer of 2013, Stefan wasn't just in relapse. He was in a downward spiral.
Witnesses said he drank every day, that he would be intoxicated before noon.
He didn't do anything but drink.
According to the defense, Stefan had managed to hide his addiction from friends, family, and even co-workers, but not Anna. They claimed that she had suffered the full wrath of Stefan's drunken temper.
They tried to portray Stefan Anderson as an alcoholic who was aggressive and mean when he was intoxicated.
They tried to paint her as the poor woman who was stuck in this horrible relationship.
And the defense claimed that once alone in Stefan's condo that night, he had turned on her, furious at how she had embarrassed him on the ride home.
Anderson was the one fighting her, the one beating her up.
And the defense said that Anna had done the only thing she could have done, fight back.
I thought it was a very strong self-defense case.
In fact, the defense was so sure of their case that they wrapped it up without putting Anna on the stand.
She hit him 25 times because she did what she had to do. She did what any reasonable person would do.
Naturally, the prosecution strongly disagreed.
Anna Trujillo violently beat her intimate partner to death for no reason. That is what makes her so dangerous. There is nothing to stop her from doing it again.
Nothing but sending her to prison, that is.
Anything less than a life verdict is unacceptable.
On April 8, 2014, the jury in Houston, Texas announced it had reached a verdict in the trial of Anna Trujillo. The 45-year-old was charged with murdering her ex-boyfriend, Stefan Anderson, with a stiletto-heeled shoe.
From the get-go, this case garnered national attention because of the murder weapon.
Anna didn't deny killing Stefan.
She claimed that it was self-defense.
But when the verdict was read, the jury found her guilty of murder. Anna took the news surprisingly well.
She was very calm. She was very collected.
But she wasn't resigned to her fate. At her sentencing on April 10, 2014, she finally took the stand to make a statement. And she wasn't apologetic either.
She wasn't like scared or worried or nervous.
Instead, she all but demanded that the jury give her the minimum sentence.
As little as 5 years in prison?
And despite the fact that the jury had rejected her self-defense claim, she stuck to it.
She talked about some of the violence that she'd suffered.
She described how horrific the fight was, that she was just trying to use self-defense to keep herself alive.
In fact, she didn't just describe it. She went on and on about it for over 7 hours.
She was telling her whole life story.
She just kept on talking and talking and talking.
Anna and her attorney even went so far as to act out key moments of the alleged struggle in front of the jury.
It was Anna Trujillo's show.
But would her last-minute plea, all 420 minutes of it, make any impression on the jury?
The jury sentenced her to life in prison.
She was so shocked.
She began sobbing.
I think she expected to get off very easy.
For Stefan's friends and family, some of whom had traveled all the way from Sweden for the trial, the sentence brought some sense of closure.
Even if nothing can get him back again, we're happy that justice is served.
But it couldn't make up for the tragic death of a kind and gentle man.
He did not deserve what happened to him at all, in any way. He was a really good person, the best person ever. And she is either a really crazy person or a really evil person that could do something like that.
See, that was amazing. I love this.